Christine, thank you so much for coming on. I was just telling you before we officially started recording that I genuinely, personally want to be learning from you all of the things that you are really excited and focused on right now in terms of
Mm,
women stepping into their femininity and what it really means to
hmm
like be the queen in our life, which is the name of your new coaching program. So thank you for coming in because I just can't wait to take the notes and learn
Oh,
myself.
oh my gosh, you don't have to thank me. This is like what I love so much.
I know. And by the way, I know you just moved, but you already are so stylish, like the plant and what's behind you. And I know you guys are like, that's a big tease because you can't see, but it's
Yeah.
just it's really it's quite a feat that you moved recently and you already have it. You just have it look like it's already ready to
Well,
go.
this is so one of the things that I study and teach is nervous system regulation. And I have learned for me in particular, and I think it's true for a lot of women, our environment drastically impacts our nervous system. So for me to live in messiness and unpacked boxes
Right?
is more stressful than just like we just like hunkered down for
Yep.
2 days and we just got it done.
Yeah.
And I also, part of being a queen is asking for support and enrolling support and not trying to be a superhero woman and do it all ourselves.
Everything you just said. So good. Everything you just said is so good. I think all of us can use the reminder to ask for help and receive help.
Yes. And receive it and not feel guilty about it and not feel like you have to give something back and realize it truly is a gift for people to support. And oftentimes like our gratitude for that and our letting that in is the gift to the other person. And women, if we think about basic anatomy, we are the receivers. That is our most biological truth. And we live out of harmony with that so much by being the doer, by being the giver. And yes, as women, we're naturally givers. That's just something that feels good to us. But if we do it from a depleted state, then we're in the shadow of giving. We're in the people pleasing. We're in the like, I have to do this because we're in the overcompensating. And that's the kind of giving that, gives you thyroid problems and makes your hair fall out. And you hold on to excess weight. And I can go on and on and on because women, we can survive depleted. We can still do it. However, something pays the price. Our relationships, our body, our nervous system, our friendships, our marriage, you name it. So I am such a stand, and I'm a stand for this because I had to learn this. For women coming from a full cup and giving from that overflow.
I just love listening to you say all those things. My husband often tells me that I'm like the giving tree, and he goes,
Mm,
"It's a very sad book." He goes,
it is.
He goes, at the end, there's nothing left. And
It
so
is.
he'll be like standing off to the side and we'll be at some event and someone will walk over and say, "Oh, would you mind? Could you open your home and host for this charity thing?" And as I go to say yes, he goes, "No, she can't. She actually has to say no.
I
She
love
can't
that.
host anything else this year." And then I'm like, "Why are you my business?" And he's like, "Because all you do is say yes. And
Mhm.
you are a shell of yourself most of the time." And I think I was talking to our mutual friend. We have a bunch of mutual friends, which probably says a lot about who we are. But Kate Northrup and I were having a conversation, and she said, just because you can ski a black diamond doesn't mean that that's what you should do daily. And
Exactly.
I think a lot of women are quite talented at reading a room and quite talented at really genuinely making other people happy. And then we make it our entire life
Hmm.
do that. And then we wonder why, after everybody leaves Thanksgiving dinner, we're having like a panic attack because we
Yep.
forgot to even get up to pee during dinner.
Yeah,
Like,
or eat, and
eat
and
anything.
I love what you said about, just because we can, but also just even if we enjoy it doesn't mean we should do it. Like I'm sure there's a big part of you that enjoys opening your home and hosting people, but there's a limit to that. And in the words of Terry Real, like we have our internal boundaries, like our boundaries with ourselves, and then our limits with other people. And when we don't honor those, we end up, like I said, depleted or resentful or tired or just kind of questioning, like, why did I do that again?
Yeah.
Why did I do that again? But I know for myself, this is something I've had to work on for many years. The upsetting other people or letting other people down thing is a thing. It's a thing. And especially when we care deeply, it's more than just what someone's going to think of us. We can be uncomfortable with other people's discomfort. And I'm so glad you brought up the giving tree because I would rename that book the codependent tree. That's a more accurate name for that book. And for those of you that don't know the book, somebody gave me that book for my daughter, and I'm like, thank you. And I will never read that book to her because it's just like give and give and give until you're basically a stump. And like, what? Why? Why do we ever want to teach that? But for so many like centuries, that's been modeled for us in so many ways. And there's this kind of expectation that, we are here to make everyone else happy. And
Yeah,
for so many women, they're the nucleus of the family. And for so many of the people listening, you're probably in the sandwich generation of having your kids and your parents that you're taking care of. And there's like so many people that you think you need to take care of and make happy. And it's exhausting. And one of the best things I have done in my life is work on my own internal boundaries, set my limits with others, and let it be okay if someone's mad at me. Let it be okay if someone's upset. Let it be okay if someone's disappointed.
yeah,
Because if you can't be with that, you will never have healthy boundaries and limits in your life.
yeah. I want to ask you this question because it's such a universal, it feels almost universal. I was hosting this event recently and we were talking about some of these kinds of things. And this woman raised her hand and she very bravely said out loud what everyone was thinking. And she said, "Why is it that while you're sharing all of this, I have this part of me that feels like it's selfish and I feel shame for listening to what you're saying. It's almost like there's this cognitive dissonance. It's so wired into me that it really feels wrong
Hmm.
to think about making my day first priority about my own being filled up and taking care of myself. It literally, she's like, it's and I said, raise your hand if you feel like you've been
Yeah.
taught that without thinking about it or not, it makes you feel like that would be selfish. And everybody raised their hand except for like three people. So what has been conditioned that
Mm.
we feel like it is selfish to create that life where our cup is filled? What about that feels selfish? And
Hmm.
how do we unwind that so that we actually see it correctly?
I'm so glad you brought this up because, like you said, every hand in the room almost went up. And so this is an extremely common thing, especially with women. So let's back it up way back to childhood and talk developmental psychology for a moment. There's certain developmental stages, if you go into Erickson's stages of development, where certain needs need to be met, like our psychosocial needs need to be met. And one of those stages is like feeling like other people are there to meet our needs and take care of us, but also have boundaries with us. And if that need isn't met, if we as a child have to please in order to interrupt chaos or stop chaos or make a parent love us, or we're parentified at a young age, like we have to take care of a parent anyway, or we're the older sibling and have to take care of others, or we realize dad gives us attention if we're good and we get good grades, or if we're yelled at, if we have big emotions and big feelings, or we want something, we miss out on like integrating into ourselves that it's okay for me to have needs and people meet my needs. And for so many people, that does not happen in childhood for a variety of reasons that I just listed. And it's an imprint in our nervous system and our subconscious. And so we overcompensate and develop basically a survival strategy because we need to belong, basic survival need. Like if we go way back to when we lived in tribes, if we didn't have a tribe, if we didn't have a system to live in, we would die. And so it's still encoded in us that I need others to survive. And so we strategize from a very young age. How do I belong? How do I fit in? And especially with our parents, how do I not make them mad? How do I get their attention? And there's this kind of whole good girl thing, and girls are rewarded when they're good. And so it kind of goes in, well, if I'm good and if I take care of others, my parents don't fight as much, my mom's nice to me, my dad gives me attention, I'm validated, on and on and on. So it becomes an identity. And when we are out of sync with what we feel like is an identity, it does feel shameful because it feels so wrong, because we're going against a survival strategy. And so what I like to help women do is reframe it, because it takes a while to unravel this, especially if this is an imprint at 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old. It takes some time to get to the stage where you don't feel selfish. So I like to use the words, it's self-honoring. Like, I'm making this self-honoring choice, and the distinction between selfish and self-honoring, because from where I sit, Cathy, people pleasing actually is way more selfish than not, because when we're people pleasing and taking care of others, we're actually looking out for ourselves. We don't want to make somebody mad. We don't want to get in trouble. Like, we don't want to sit with the confrontation or the discomfort of that. So if you can go, actually, what I'm doing is more selfish than self-honoring, I'm going to sit over to that self-honoring, and then also doing the inner child and the nervous system work of, when we set a boundary inside ourselves or a limit with others, there's going to be a part of us that gets activated and kind of panics a little bit, because subconsciously we fear we're going to get in trouble, lose connection, all that stuff. And so we've got to, I love to put hand on heart, hand on belly, and reassure that little one inside, it's okay. I got you. You deserve to have your needs met. Like, is there anything else you need? And attune to our own needs first and foremost, so that we don't build resentment and deplete ourselves.
Everything you just said is so conscientious and really profound. And I relate so much. I was definitely a parentified child. I was definitely taking care of my parents who needed, at that point, me to do that. And it is really powerful to sit with the fact that this feeling of being selfish, it's it's not coming from the alignment with our truth. It's coming from
Mm-mm.
a disordered sort of way that we attach to our environment, and it's so embedded. And as you said it, I was like, oh, it's really naming how it does feel inside of me. It's like you found that spot, that like unconscious place, and that really is it. And I was
Yeah,
thinking about when you were sharing, I think that that's really very wise, that being a people pleaser is actually the opposite,
it
of
is.
being really generous, actually, because it's really manipulative,
Yep.
because you're really trying to control the environment. And it makes me think of the idea of the most lovely thing you can gift to another person, which is what everybody's looking for in themselves, even, is the feeling of wholeness. And so if you are the walking embodiment of whatever feels like wholeness for you, everyone around you feels lighter just being around you. Like, it feels safe to other people when they know you're okay and you know what your boundary
Mm-hmm.
is and you're not trying
Mm-hmm.
to get something from them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to ask you about how it specifically affects our love life, because I know that the work you do in this program, Be the Queen, but also just in your own life, all of this, not only did it set you free, but
Mm-hmm.
it became the catalyst for what allowed you to bring in really healthy love into your life. Help us make the connection of why the relationship romantically that we want kind of hinges upon what you just said. Because it
Mm-hmm.
definitely doesn't seem like that. It seems like what we need to do is take better online dating photos, or what we need to do is move to a better location, or what we need to do is
Right.
like change the age range that we're looking for. But it seems like you've come up with a different conclusion.
Hmm. Or my favorite one, I just need to love myself more, which that's not it either. So, oh my gosh, so much to say here. As you know, and as everybody listening probably knows, we in our romantic life, we are seeking what we didn't get in childhood, like bottom line. So, if let's say we had a dad who was unavailable in some way. Either he abandoned us or he was emotionally unavailable. Let's zero in on emotionally unavailable, because that's a really common one. We will tend to attract and be attracted to men like that. Because subconsciously, the inner child is like, I didn't get this key need met from my father. Maybe this guy that looks like him, not physically, but energetically, will give me that. And it's not just with dad. It can happen with mom as well. You know, maybe mom was an addict and you were in a codependent relationship with her. And then what do you end up attracting? Someone with addictive traits or full on addiction. Because unmet childhood needs don't just go away. I hate the saying time heals all wounds because it doesn't. It just buries them deeper. And so if I were to sum up like personal development in one phrase, it would be reparenting. Like really reparenting ourselves because the places we don't take ownership of and reparent inside ourselves, we will look to a romantic partner to do. Because let's face it, we come in and our most intimate relationship is with our parents or parent, whoever is there. Then we project that onto intimate relationships and our dating life. And if we don't go back and do the work on our childhood, we will continue to play that out, which is why you end up kind of in the same relationship with a different face over and over and over again. So let's use the example of people pleaser since we were unpacking that. So if you are a pleaser, you probably are a chameleon as well. And you're probably highly adaptive. And being adaptive is actually a feminine superpower. However, when we're adaptive while sacrificing our own authenticity, then we're in the shadow of that superpower, right? And so many women are adaptive. They are chameleons. They will be who they think they need to be in order to get the relationship. And so how that can look in relationship is in the beginning like not really speaking up, and it can be super super subtle. Like you can be on a date and let's just say the man is like kind of not that nice to the server, and instead of
Oh,
saying something, you just let it go. And it was subtle. It wasn't that bad. And you kind of talk yourself out of your own truth. And that is a direct route to ending up miserable in a relationship. And, the other thing we do is we have so many walls, protective walls that we put up in front of us. And for a lot of especially high achieving women, this appears masculine, right? So many women, single women listening, one of the things you might be told by people is you're too much in your masculine or you're too intimidating. And I seriously, that makes me want to throw up because it's so far from the truth. You're not too much in your masculine. You're in hypervigilance. You're in an adaptive strategy because your nervous system is probably fried. You've been out of sync with your femininity and your authenticity, and you've had to adapt and do and kind of put on these protective masks and walls. It's not your masculine. Your healthy masculine is directive and decisive, and we need that. But most women aren't too much in their masculine, they're in hypervigilance. And so when we have these kind of unmet needs and this dysregulated nervous system and these subconscious desires from our inner child, it's our inner child that's doing the picking. Like I look back to my 30s, which were mostly single, and if I lined every man up I dated, I didn't have a type. They all looked different. However, I could go, oh, my 8-year-old picked that one. My 14-year-old picked that one. My 22-year-old picked that one. We're constantly like learning through relationships. And if we want to get to what I call a side by side relationship, which is when, two people are standing facing the same direction towards their vision and values rather than looking at each other being like, are you going to meet my needs? Are you going to do this? Are you going to rescue me? Are you going to take care of me? Are you going to leave me? Are you going to cheat on me? Like there's so much like expectation and fear that's running, we can really, really stand side by side. And when we like extricate ourselves from that people pleaser thing and we come into like, this is who I am. And I define confidence as radical self acceptance. Like, I don't think women need to like go do more self love courses in order to attract a man in their life. It's like radically accepting who you are and taking 100% responsibility for it and not looking consciously or subconsciously for someone to come and save you.
I mean, it's so good. And I can't wait till your next book comes out because, you know, you have many books in there in this. I know you've written many books, but like this whole little sermon you just gave is really So powerful. You know, I I'm gonna say something that is like really kind of like sort of bringing up the beehive,
Hmm.
picking up the dirt. But so many women, I was thinking about this the other day. I was taking a shower and I was like, I'm 45, and so many people in my life right now are contemplating divorce
Mm, hmm.
because typically, more or less, you're getting married in your late 20s, early 30s. I was 30 when I got married. And now at 45, I have um, been growing and evolving, right? And my husband is my best friend. He was my next door neighbor and he was my best friend before we started dating. So we're very blessed because we make each other laugh. He's very kind, very loyal, very love. Like we get along really well and we have all the same kind of like deep core values in the world. However, as it goes in most relationships, while I was continuing to like really look within and really start to like expand, I started to see that he was telling jokes all the time because he was not wanting to be in his emotions, which my
Mm,
dad was emotionally unavailable for really horrible reasons. He's emotionally
yep.
unavailable, but like with a nicer exterior and quite fun.
Yeah.
And then my mom was super codependent, and very depressed and suicidal, which thank God he's not, but he had a widow as a mother, and so he's extremely
Mm,
codependent and um resents me in my power because he gives away all his power. So it's a really interesting dance, and I've just come to really like love him and walk beside him. And I said to him in the summer, I was like, let's be a soul family and let's separate from our marriage, but keep our family together right now while you and I both continue to explore what feels like the next evolution of us as people. And it's been really
mhm,
beautiful. And because we have this really good kindness to each other, somehow for us that works as like a next level of what could be.
mhm,
For so many women I talk to, they get to this place where they're like, do I need to just go find another human? Right?
mhm,
Is there a way for me in this relationship that now 15 years in, let's face it, there's codependency, there's the
mhm.
set up unconscious agreements, right? That are and it's just uncanny how many people in my life right now, like the romantic period has faded
Yeah.
and they are like, what's the next 15 years going to look like, right? And
Yeah.
my parents got divorced when they were in their mid 40s, and I was like, how could they have done that? But now, I mean, they had a horrendous, abusive, terrible, my dad was
Mm,
cheating. Thank God they got divorced. We're not in that situation, thank God. But I think that it's one thing to have this conversation with single women, and I think that that's helpful. I also think that married people right now, it's so much more common
yeah.
to make the divorce decision. And I'm not faulting anybody for that. I just find
Right.
it really curious and interesting. And like, what do all these people do with the inconvenient truth that starts to come
Right.
up about who
Yes.
they chose in their 20s and 30s, and what do you do with it now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all that. It's so, I think it's when we can share that intimately and that vulnerably, people people really relate and really, really get it. And I was you in my first marriage. I was younger. I got married at 28 and divorced at around 31 for, a lot of the reasons around growth. And I hear the same thing with single women, like where are the conscious men? Where are the men that are going to do the work? And they're out there. But I want to speak to the marriage and I want to speak to the divorce for a moment because oftentimes when we're in that place, it's kind of black and white either or. Like either I stay or I go. And for a lot of women, there's kind of the fantasy of someone new and what a relationship could look like. And when we're in that, we're kind of in the same problem that we're trying to get out of because we are thinking of ourselves relationally and what life could be like. Could it be better? Could the grass be greener? Versus really looking at our soul curriculum and focusing only on our own growth. So I want to speak to something. I'm going to tie it back. I want to speak to the feminine superpower of tapping into the archetype of the muse because I think it's one of the most underrated, unspoken about things, especially in our boss babe culture. So again, I'm going to tie this back, but I'm going to go another direction for a moment.
I love it.
So when I called in my husband now, so I've been engaged 3 times, married twice, divorced once, one broken engagement in my 20s. Um, I really surrendered my list because I realized that having my list of my non-negotiables was not surrender. It was an aspect of control, and I wasn't trusting God. It's sort of like ordering something at a restaurant and then following the server into the kitchen to make sure they got it right. So I burned my list and I said, God, and we teach this in our program how to do this. I'm like, God, you pick like my soul partner because I'm still really attached to my non-negotiables. And when I met Steph, I was really excited and he ticked so many boxes and we were introduced and we talked only on WhatsApp for 3 months. And then when we met in person, it was amazing. There was good chemistry, but healthy chemistry, like not fireworks, addictive chemistry. And then we sat down and we started talking about money. And one of the things on the list that I burned was must make as at least as much as I did or more. And I found out not only did he make less, like hardly anything, he was nearly 100K in debt. And I just remember feeling like I was going to throw up. And but in my body, my mind was like no, 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 run, but my body said stay. My heart said stay. And what I had to feel into was, is this a situational thing for him? Or is this just who he is? Right? Like, is this a phase in life or this is who he is? And what I saw in getting to know him was passion, work ethic, dedication, not looking for a free lunch, not all over the place. Like, he had really strong masculine qualities. And so I was like, I wonder if I could be a muse because he's a coach as well. And Cathy, like, I could have jumped in and built his business. It would have been easy peasy for me. I could have told him exactly what to do. And I was like, no, like I cannot do that. That's codependence. It is. And control and not feminine. And I really want to be in the embodied feminine in this. And so I was like, I am just going to like take care of me and love him and believe in him. And not in like a 1950s, like, let me cook you dinner and tell you you're awesome. But I'm just really going to believe in him. I'm not going to let my fear about where he is in his life on this thing, and finances are a big thing, impact how I see him. And I really stepped into the energetic of being a muse, like really being empowered in my feminine, loving, nurturing, but also calling forward and not taking care of and not rescuing and not panicking. And within a year, he was completely out of debt. Within 2 years, he met where I was. And within 3 years, he was making more than me, so much so that I could really take 2 years off when we had our
Oh,
daughter. So I share this story because for women in that place of being really kind of awakened and you're feeling not met by your partner, I really hear you. And it's super, super common. But there's some things I see women do in that situation that don't get you what you want. One is trying to enroll your partner. Read this book, go to this therapy, come to this workshop, like trying to change them. That's not a muse. That's control. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is thinking life would be so better if I was with someone else. What my invitation is can you step into being that muse? Can you be so embodied in who you are and what matters to you and your personal and spiritual and emotional growth that he either is inspired by that and meets you, or the relationship reaches its expiration date? And you're not like jumping into someone else or something else that you think is better, because often when we're in relationship, like we kind of only know life like in relationship. But if you can just like really be in that, this is who I am and it's okay if I don't know how this is going to go, and not try to control any aspect of it, either finding someone new or changing who you're with. I have seen many times, not always, but many times, I have seen the man step up. And I think for women, if we can step more into that muse and call men forward, not by controlling, not by suggesting, not by being their therapist or their coach, but by being that muse, by really standing in it and being the invitation and the inspiration. If it's going to change, that's how.
First of all, I think that's beautiful, and I have seen that work. I can think of a very few handful of times where I did that well, and I can also
Hmm.
think of other people who have done that. I think just to give my example, which sometimes what is personal feels universal, so I do think
Absolutely.
um, I think what I'm going to say is specific to my husband, but I think that there's a bigger theme at play for men in general. Um, my husband didn't have a father because his father died when he was a
Hmm.
kid. And they had no money, and he had a very overbearing, very loving, but very smothering, controlling mom. And they had no money, and they lived in this little apartment and no father, right? His father died unexpectedly of heart issues when he was a little boy. And that, for lots of reasons, it didn't give him confidence. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
He didn't have a male role model, and he had a very overbearing, like fearful mother who then that feels very emasculating, I think, to a boy growing up in that house.
of course.
Um, and what I see as I zoom out is in the more recent, chunk of years, chunk of decades, I think men lost confidence.
Oh, for sure.
So I think that what's interesting is while women have had more of a renaissance, right? There's more of a calling forward, which is really so cool because it really the pendulum always swings a little too far, right? And women go a
Hmm.
little bit too much into their over functioning, but then in the end, there's really a beauty to what will hopefully become balance, like for my three daughters, you know.
Right.
In the 80s, women wore shoulder pads to literally make themselves look masculine, right? It's like we're already finding our way back to maybe a more middle balanced place. But I think along the way, there's ways in which men started to lose their sense of what they do get to provide or what they do get to
Hmm.
do. And women can meet a lot of their needs outside of that relationship. And my mom says that when she used to go to a bookstore, there was no self-development section. It was like fiction,
Hmm.
nonfiction, right?
Hmm.
And nonfiction was like books about science and tomatoes, you know? Now it's like everyone's working on themselves. And so women tend to flock to that kind of work. They
Hmm.
can also make money. They can also raise children. It's like there's so much they can do. And then there is this shift in a place where men maybe don't feel that sense of confidence. And what I've realized is um, that definitely takes a toll on his
Hmm.
sense of himself.
Yeah.
And he was a vice president of a company for a long time, and the company got bought and merged with a different company. So he got a nice severance. And then that was the end of his job. And that was 5 years
Mm.
ago.
Right.
And because I've been doing what I've been doing, it's not really a need for him to work, but I think it's work is not really about work. It's about
Right.
showing up every day with creativity and passion. And that is it's kind of like a human thing that feels
Yeah.
good in general, and especially I think for men. So I think there is a level at which, regardless of the circumstances, I think there's so much you can do to be amused, and then there is a place where men have to decide to choose to do whatever the repair is on their own
Yeah.
little 5-year-old that needs to regain his confidence.
Oh.
A lot of women listening are probably nodding their head like for whatever their circumstances, their husband is just not, you know, he's he's on his phone a lot. He's not really engaged as much as he should be,
Hmm.
would
Hmm.
really want to be in his best self.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think a lot of women start to feel like they tune out, and then
Yeah.
they get all their fulfillment from their friends, their kids, and their work.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too about this muse energy, like calling a man forward. It's definitely has boundaries and discernment. And I love what you're saying about men because, I feel like not, from talking to my husband, and we teach our Be the Queen program together because I wanted that masculine perspective because no matter how many men I coach, I'm still not a man, right? That's not my experience in the world. But you hit on some core things. Men need to feel needed. They need to feel purposeful. They need to feel respected. And so many men I've coached and spoken to have felt like my wife, my partner doesn't really even need me. Like I don't feel needed or I don't feel purposeful. And that is a huge issue for a man. And no matter what, like we can't be their mother, we can't be their coach, and it is not sexy if a man's not doing his work. Like if he's not taking care of like what he needs to take care of in the world. So I stand with you and really saying to women, yes, have your boundaries, but have it come from a place of not making him wrong, right? And not making yourself the victim. And have it really come from a place of like non-attachment. Because we can often see so clearly what someone needs to do. But one of my teachers said to me when I was thinking of divorcing my husband, my first husband, you don't walk into a nursery and wake up sleeping babies. People wake up and do the work when they're ready, and you can either wait and see, or you can say, you know what, like this is where I am, this is where you are, and like I love you, and conscious uncouple or whatever you decide to do, be a soul family. I I I just really want to be a voice for women to not try to change someone, not hang on longer expecting them to change, to really be in the embodiment of what you want, be that invitation, give it some space to see if they come forward. But if they're not coming to the party, then you have decisions to make. And I want to speak to the kids thing because I see so many women stay in marriages for the kids. I have been coaching and counseling people for 20 years, and I have not seen a profound impact of kids who had divorced parents versus kids who had parents that were in a not great marriage. Often, kids who had divorced parents and the divorced parents went on to be happy and more fulfilled thrive and end up better in adulthood and better relationally than kids who grew up in a marriage that wasn't great, that wasn't happy, who like knew their parents were staying together for the kids. So for anyone that's having guilt over like I can't leave, I have to stay for my family, we're back in the people pleaser thing, we're back in the codependent thing. And really the best thing that you can do for your kids is teach them truth and love go together. Love without truth isn't love, and truth without love is just an attack. And so when we can teach them that truth and love go together, and, there's love here, and this is the truth, and really help them understand like it has nothing to do with them and it's not their fault at all. If you move on to be a happier, healthier, mentally well human, that's better than staying together for the kids.
It's so, yeah, my friend, I think I maybe mentioned this to you the other day when we were talking, but I love this idea that Mark Grove said to me recently, which is that liberation is never a one-way street. And when
Mm-mm.
you tell the truth and you're loving, who does the other person get to become? What liberation is
Right.
there for them? And so it really is beautiful. And I think a lot of times it is black and white where people either decide to stay in an unconscious pattern or leave versus maybe there's a way to start telling the truth. And what we're doing right now that's working for us is just putting a big pause button on
Yeah.
whatever is next. And the beauty of it is, and I will share since I've shared so many other parts of it, about 2 months into me making this declaration on his own, my husband started seeing this incredible somatic healer who lives
Mm.
in India, who's so gentle and brilliant, and really is helping him to do work and to start to, and that was the first time it didn't come from me, right? And
Right. Which
so
is huge.
he's been like, I really respect this sort of pause. And my request is that you give it more time and hang in there and see what can happen while I'm,
Hmm.
and it really is a gift to him and to the kids, no matter what, and to all of us. Right. So, um, I just think these conversations, they're the kinds of conversations that we often avoid. And yet,
Yeah.
if you're seeing a friend, like I was at a friend's kid's bat mitzvah the other night, and I'm talking to
Hmm.
3 or 4 of my female friends, and 4 questions deep, everybody's in a funky spot.
Mm-hmm.
and nobody knows where to put that conversation because there's often not room. But the
Right.
work you do and these kinds of conversations make it feel more normal.
Yeah.
You're not alone. And maybe instead of like making a all or nothing, it's like, what's the next right step for you to love and tell the truth? And
Mm-hmm.
where can you go? Right?
Yeah.
The next place on the chessboard.
Yeah. My husband and I coach couples together, and we always, when we coach couples, we always do couple session and then we do individual work with each of the people too, because you can do as much couple stuff as you want, but if you don't work on your own individual stuff, like the relationship doesn't change. And I love that you're talking about the pause, because one of the things that's so important in relationships is to not like battle for certainty. We battle for certainty, we battle to be right, we subconsciously battle to keep ourselves safe. And true intimacy is exactly what you're saying. Like the conversations you're having with your husband and that agreement to pause and be in the gray, like be in the I don't know. Are we going to come back together as lovers and husband and wife? Are we going to like what's our family going to look like? To be in that in between is like so important. And for single women too, like that in between of like when in between the last relationship and the relationship you're in, that place of uncertainty, it can be really uncomfortable because the mind wants to know, the mind wants to plan. But when we can be in that space, and we really encourage couples we coach to be in that space, because a lot of times they come in to counsel to coaching with us like we need to know if we're staying together or not, and we're like we actually don't care either way, like, and that's not the question that we're asking. Like we invite you to be in the uncertainty and be in the gray and unpack this. We're clear you need to divorce this current version of the relationship. I remember talking to Esther Perel one time and was sitting next to her at a dinner, and she said, I've been married 3 times to the same person. And I said, I love that. I love that you've had 3 marriages to the same person. And especially for longer term marriages, like if you haven't been divorced a couple times in your marriage and like created something new, you're gonna be feeling that pinch because you're different people than when you got married. And so being willing to like end the old so that we can recreate the new or recreate whatever coming, you don't have access to clarity about that unless you're willing to be in the uncertainty.
I freaking love that. And I had a friend say that to us recently. She said it. She goes, we've had 5 marriages in this
Hmm.
relationship. I was like, what a healthy, cool invitation for everyone. Like, what do you get to break up with in your current relationship
Yep.
to make your relationship better? I want to ask you just as it relates to over functioning at work,
Mm.
achieving, not now in our relationships, but in work. You said earlier, like, people pleasing at some point you came around to like it's okay if people are unhappy, and I think that a business is not numbers, it's people, and so a
Hmm.
business is a relationship at scale, right? It's a lot of relationships basically, and if you have this tendency to not set boundaries, then it really could be costing you quite a bit of peace and quite a bit of success in a lot of ways, because as a business owner, as a coach, as a brand, as whatever, you do need to have some level of being okay with having a boundary and not being liked. And I'm curious what you would say to women as it relates to their business, how to fill up their own cup and
Hmm.
what that
Hmm.
looks like.
Hmm. Well, one of the first questions I'd ask myself is what is like my business? What am I trying to get by having a successful business? So, yes, serving people, living your passion, all of that. But are there any unhealthy motivators? Are you trying to get acceptance? Like I went and worked in Hollywood and was the youngest ever female agent, just worked my butt off because I wasn't popular in school and Hollywood was the adult version of the popular crowd. And I thought if I could prove myself there, then this huge hole and void inside of me would be taken care of. It wasn't. That was internal work I had to do. But so many of us that are highly driven and highly motivated, there's the really healthy aspect, wanting to serve, being in our purpose, living out our authenticity. And then there's the unhealthy motivation of, I'm going to improve myself. This is going to make me belong. I don't like not having control, so I really need to be the boss. I only am nice to myself if I achieve. Like, really consider
Ah,
what is the unhealthy parts that motivate you. And we got to deal with those parts. We got to deal with those parts because if you have any of that driving you, you're going to be cloudy in how you lead. And cloudy in how you lead can look a variety of different ways. It can look like being a shitty leader and having people not respect you and being mean and trying to be controlling, or it can be overcompensating and not firing people that need to be fired, not having firm boundaries, not being clear and creating agreements, but having a lot of expectations. And then being the over caretaker and micromanaging. This is something I see with high achieving women in leadership. The micromanaging is off the charts. And we think it's just being a good leader and invested in our business. But really, it's a trust issue. Right? It's do we trust other people? And so many high functioning, high achieving boss baby women have the whole if I want to get it done right, I need to do it myself. And again, that's like a fast track to depletion. And that's not how we empower other people at all. And then they'll being afraid to make people mad or hurt feelings or whatever, then we don't have truth and love paired together. And are you really helping someone on your team grow if you enable them? It's sort of like a child. Like if you do everything for them, they're going to be so ill-equipped when they get to middle school because they're not going to know how to do anything. Same thing with kids. If you don't have boundaries with your kids, they're not going to respect you and they're not going to be able to function well in the world. And so when we over this, I see so many women do this. They over mother employees in the kind of taking care of codependent instead of really calling people forward and bringing the best out of them. And again, it's okay if people are upset. And one of the things I love to remind women in leadership is it's the both and. You can both really praise what someone's doing really well and give them feedback
yeah,
of what needs to change.
yeah. I think one thing that also shows up, everything you just said is right on, and also in the clients you call forward, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's customers, right? Or whether it's clients, depending on whether you offer a brand, a service or a product or whatever you do, it's just fascinating how the messaging can either call forward someone who's really needy, or you can
Yeah.
call forward somebody who is empowered and therefore has autonomy for the decisions they make. And it's all so unconscious, but we get to decide who we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to and who we're not.
Mm-hmm.
We get to qualify who we're really wanting to work with and who we're not. And similarly, yes, in our team, the way that we are running our team, we can ask for what we need and we don't have to constantly worry. I guess I've heard that said that you get to decide if you want to be liked or respected. And a lot
Yeah.
of women will they'll choose being liked over being respected. And there is a way to be both. You know, there's a
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up the client thing because I imagine a lot of coaches are listening. And one of the
yeah,
things I love to do is train coaches, especially women coaches. And I see so often this belief that you kind of have to take what you get, especially when you're starting out,
right.
and get high maintenance, needy, victimy clients and just think that they have to take them because that's, they need the money or they're just starting their coaching practice or they can help
Yep.
them. And it's if you start settling for the kind of client you want because of money, you're out of integrity as a coach. Because if you're not feeling a resonance with them as their coach, and every time you see a message from them, you're like, oh God, then you're really not serving them. It's just transactional. You just want the money. And so much of this comes down to a self-worth thing of thinking that I have to settle for what I can get, especially when I'm just starting out. And that does not have to be true in any way, shape, or form. We can be really clear about the clients we want to call in. But, a no to something is a yes to something else. And again, we have to sit in that place of uncertainty of
Yeah.
saying no, saying no. This is dating too. Saying no, not quite, not it, until we really start coming into alignment and attracting what we actually want.
really fascinating because at the core of this conversation, so much of it comes down to the tendency to people please and not be truthful because it keeps us feeling safe.
Absolutely.
Such a through line. And it really comes down to no longer gaslighting yourself.
Hmm.
Don't stop ghosting yourself for what you know to be true and being okay with whatever people decide to do with your truth. And the more you live that way, it's very liberating. It feels better than any kind of abundance. It's
Hmm.
the abundance of like being being in alignment and
Hmm.
having enough wholeness that you're okay with how people receive you and you don't
Yeah.
outsource your wholeness to how everyone validates or doesn't validate you. And that's been really my work. And it's quite amazing to now have the strength to tell the truth and look back and go, wow, for so long I had my own key to let myself out of my own cage and I didn't know that I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
One of the visualizations I used to do when I was really unraveling my people pleasing codependence, because they really go hand in hand. And I tend to be like more covert in my communication. So I'll just sort of take and take and take, and you won't know I'm pissed off until like I blow up the friendship. Like it's just like I'm done instead of really just handling something when it comes in. So it's been a big thing for me to learn. And one of the visualizations I would do when I thought I made someone mad or I thought I hurt someone is give them back to God. Like to remember that like this is their path and they're a child of God. And I would put them in a visualization. I'd put them in a bubble because I'd be all enmeshed, right? I was breaking all that enmeshment and codependence and attachment and people pleasing. And I'd imagine putting them in a bubble and then just sending them up to source, like up to God and being like, you've got them. Like it is not my job to take care of this person or make this person happy. And that's something a dynamic that I bought into with my mom. Like I thought it was my job, really, to make both my parents happy. And so that's been a deprogramming I've had to do over time. But that visualization really kind of had helped me take my rightful place and cut cords and realize, oh wait, like God's got them. Like I don't have to.
totally. I definitely feel that line. I hear that in my head sometimes, like whatever is in the highest divine order,
Hmm.
even me triggering this person will ultimately lead to whatever is the liberation for the divine order of all things. End of story. Maybe it's a gift,
Period. Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's like sometimes I remember if I have to fire somebody and I approach it with this like love, it's like, listen, if this isn't feeling like a yes to me, then there's clearly a place you're meant to be that I'm keeping you from.
Absolutely.
And so there's that way of like zooming out and really knowing that everything winds up in divine order. And it's not your job to think that you have to be in charge of everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Everything shared today is really important and nourishing and beautiful. I feel like this conversation could just be on repeat every episode because it
Mhm.
really is the stuff, you know. We can
Mhm.
keep talking about flow state and how to be meditating and all. It's like, but yet this is what's underneath that has to be
Yeah.
heard. So
Yeah.
tell everybody where they can join your next workshop and where they can
Mhm.
follow you and your podcast so that they can stay in the conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have a podcast called Over It and On with It, and it's 2 episodes a week. And one, I do an interview like you were just on last week. And the other episode, Wednesday, the numbered episodes are unscripted, unedited coaching sessions with people. So I combine coaching and spiritual psychology. I do a lot of inner child work. So you can learn a lot and sort of be in the client's chair, be a fly on the wall in a coaching session there. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, I do one-on-one coaching. My husband and I do couples coaching. And what's really exciting that we're teaching this spring is our Be the Queen program, and that's for women calling in their conscious relationship. It was based on how I called in my husband, which was quite miraculous. And I was 40 when I did it, and I had my baby girl completely naturally at home, no fertility at 44. So I like, want to be an inspiring voice to women that are buying. And I have to actually think about my ages because one of the things I did was just like not buy into age anymore. So I actually didn't say my age, didn't celebrate numbers on birthdays. Like I have to really think about it. But I know some people like to know numbers. But that
Fire. No,
program's
I'm glad you're sharing that. Yeah.
yeah, that program is for really any woman who is either in relationship and is like wondering if it's the right relationship, separating, divorced, or newly single, getting over an ex, or wanting to call, been single a long time and wanting to call in that partner. It works. We have an over 65% success rate of women calling in their man within a year of graduating from the program. But I just want to say, like, that's not the goal. The goal is for you to come so much home to yourself that if the relationship is in your highest good, it comes in effortlessly and easily, and you don't have any suffering, and you learn how to balance, how to integrate both your desire and your longing without any suffering. So if you want to join us for that, you can go to christinehasser.com/Cathy.
Love that. I really love that. I'm like, I want to do it. And
Do it.
I know six people who need to do it. So
Amazing.
thank you for being so loving and so wise and for letting us have just like such an intimate conversation. It's really so healing.
Oh, well, thank you for creating a space for that by being a container where so much vulnerability and just, these kind of conversations between women, it's just coming home to like who we are, right? When we can like drop the masks, and it's so fun to talk about business and all the exciting things and our kids, and when we can really come and really talk about intimacy and like the things that we're like working through and healing inside ourselves, it's like we find that sisterhood that so many of us really, really need.
100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.